Hey everyone, it's Charlene. I have a fun embossing folder technique to share with you today. This is the Chinoiserie embossing folder from Honeybee Stamps, and yes, I did have to look up how to pronounce that. I consider myself cultured, but sometimes those pronunciations will get us. This embossing folder is absolutely beautiful. It has roses and leaves as well as a bunch of different hummingbirds. I'm sure a lot of you have seen how to do the blackout technique. It's been very popular lately, so I thought it'd be fun today to do a variation on that technique using something that is often overlooked in our crafty stash. So I have a piece of colored cardstock here. It doesn't matter what color you use. I'm using a slightly darker color, and I'm going to go ahead and put it in the embossing folder and line it up right about where I want the finished image to be. This is a 3D embossing folder, so my machine calls for the platform base and then the embossing folder and then the adapter plate. Now, when you're working with these kinds of embossing folders, you do want to keep the hinge of the embossing folder towards your die cutting machine. That helps to ensure you don't break your embossing folder. I have done that before in the past. If you have any issues with your paper cracking, you can lightly mist it with water beforehand when you're running it through. Take a look here at our embossed image. You can see it's really pretty with the hummingbirds and the florals, but we're actually going to use the back side of it. So we're going to use the side that has the images impressed into the paper. I'm using my sticky mat in order to keep my paper in place and to keep ink off my fingers. I don't like getting messy. I'm bringing in some white pigment ink. So this is how it's a little bit different from the blackout technique. With the blackout technique, you use black ink, but with this technique, we're going to come in with white pigment ink. And we're just going to swipe it all over the embossed panel until all of that negative space is covered with the pigment ink. So I used a darker cardstock here, so those images are really going to stand out, but you can use any color of cardstock. You can let this air dry, but if you're impatient like me, you can come in and use a heat tool to speed up that drying process. So I'm going to go ahead and dry this thoroughly with my heat tool. This is all dry now, so I'm going to bring back in my embossing folder and I'm going to put the paper back in so that it lines up over the images. It kind of pops into place like a puzzle piece. Once it's in there, I'll go ahead and gently close the cover and run it through my die cutting machine again. I ran it through my die cutting machine and you can see it brought back some of that dimension that we had lost from adding the pigment ink. So now we have this really fun, quick and easy background that we can use for a card. I wanted to show you an alternative, and that is you can use patterned paper. So I have this beautiful piece of patterned paper that I ran through with the embossing folder, and now I'm coming in and adding the white pigment ink to the top. Now you're going to see the difference here because this is a lighter colored piece of paper. Once I have a good coating here of the white pigment ink, I'm going to go ahead and dry this piece as well. And because this is lighter, once I'm done drying, you can see it's a little more subtle here, but I want to build up that white pigment ink even more. Here's the difference between those two. So I'm going to come in and do a second layer of the pigment ink. Adding a second or even a third layer of pigment ink is really going to help bring the embossed pattern out from the background of your card. Here's my second layer. So I'll bring back in my heat tool, make sure to get this nice and dry. And once it's dry, I'm going to show you, look at this fun effect you have here. It's almost like a hidden picture-in-picture kind of thing. It's really, really pretty. The camera does not do it justice. I ran it through a second time with the embossing folder to bring back some of that lost detail. And now you can really see, I want to compare these two here. Here's the darker version and here's the lighter version. Very different looks, but absolutely gorgeous for a card background. I'm trimming these down by 1/4 of an inch on two sides, so that way our finished piece will have 1/8 of an inch border going all the way around on these A2 sized cards. I've chosen a white background for our darker piece, and then I chose this eucalyptus colored background for our lighter piece. I cut a couple of double-sided adhesive sheets so that they're just slightly smaller than the finished panels. So I'll come in here and I'm going to line these up along the back and just lay them right across the panel. This will help ensure everything stays nice and secure on the front of our card and we aren't going to have any lifting. Just want to make sure and get it nice and centered before I press it down. And then I'll go ahead and do the same thing for my second panel. Now I can add some glue to the back of my card panels and adhere these to a couple of A2 sized card bases. To get even more fancy here with our cards, I'm going to bring in the new Lovely Layers butterflies. These create some beautiful layered butterflies. And I'm going to cut all of these out of white cardstock. And you'll see once they're layered, these would also look really beautiful if you cut them in different colors. Now these butterflies do cut out in groups, which makes it really easy to see which pieces go together. So I'll start here with the bottom wings. The top wings are going to layer right over the top of those at the center. And then the body piece is going to layer right over on top of that, right where the center of the butterfly wings are. Lastly, there's this little detail piece here. And you can use these if you want to or not. I think it still looks nice without this added little extra detail. So keep that in mind when you're working with a die cut that has layers like this. You don't always have to use all of the different layers. But here's a finished butterfly. I'm going to go ahead and put together the rest of these off camera. I also went ahead and prepped my sentiment using the Great Greetings spring dies. So you have bloom, grow, as well as spring, and then you have a shadow die to go with all of those. So I cut the shadow out of the same color cardstock that I used for my matting, so that way our card has a finished cohesive look. I've added some foam squares on the back there, and I've added some foam squares to the butterflies as well. Now I like to add it on the wings, and then you can put glue in the center of the butterfly, so that way when you adhere it to the front of your card, it's going to make sure that those wings stay popped up. I've arranged my sentiment, arranged my butterflies. I'm going to go ahead and adhere everything down, and I'm doing kind of a C here along the edge of the card. It's a nice flow to use for a card design, and I'm adding some vintage pearl stickers that are really very pretty. They match really nicely, I feel like, and I'm going with that same flow that I did with the butterflies. For this card, I stamped out a sentiment that says "Hello Beautiful" from the So Special stamps, and then I cut it with the coordinating die, and I have everything placed where I want it to go. So I'll take off the release tape from my foam squares here and adhere everything down to the card. And depending on where you put your foam squares, you can get different kinds of lift with your butterfly wings. So I want this front wing to be lifted a little bit, so I'm just going to add a foam square right here, and then I'm going to glue everything else for this butterfly. So I'll add some glue here to the little body and some to this wing here and place it down, and you'll see it's going to make that one wing pop up. Last but not least, I'm putting our third butterfly, and that creates a nice little triangle here. And I'll add a few of these iridescent pearls from the Celebration Pearl stickers. So here are our two finished cards using this really fun white pigment ink technique. I guess we could call it a whiteout technique. And I really, really like this one here. It has that hidden picture-in-picture from the embossing. So pretty and elegant. All right, everyone, I hope that you picked up some tips and tricks today. Please be sure to like and subscribe, as well as hit that notification bell so that I can continue to bring you more crafty content in the future. Until next time, happy crafting.